Thank you very much. I am Bambang Suharjo. I want to present my paper with the title is Common Clustering and Linear Regression Model for Grouping and Treatment Prediction on Natural Disaster and Poverty Average Percentage to Decrease the Victims in 2015-2019. Okay, I want to begin with the introduction. The background of our presentation is the first that geographically, Indonesia as an archipelagic country prone to storms and tsunamis, a country that is meeting between three active tectonic plates that are prone to earthquakes and volcanoes as a country and the tropics that is raw against flood and landslides. Various studies have been conducted to examine the natural disasters and poverty and the many victims that arise, and also been carried out to cluster regions based on the level of disasters and the number of victims. Clustering is needed to investigate the number of natural disasters, poverty, and disaster victims so that they can be identified in each group and expected to make it easier to map and contribute to effort to suppress victims and at the same time improve welfare. And then regression analysis is also needed to make sure the prediction about the number of disasters influence poverty and victims. The research problem is are how the cluster of regions are on disasters, poverty, and number of victims. And the second is how the influence of disaster and poverty on the number of victims. Let's begin with the literature review. We have many literature review. The first about disaster, the victims, and poverty. Natural disasters affect human and animal lives and properties all around the world. In many cases, natural disaster caused by differences natural happen such as earthquakes, landslides, storm, flood, tsunami, and volcanic eruption. Natural disaster fatalities include total death, total affected, and total economic losses. Indonesia Statistic Board defined natural disaster victims are death or loss, injure, and suffer. So, from the two sources, we can conclude that it is important to decrease fatalities in death, losses, injury, and suffer implied by natural disaster. The low income and vulnerable populations who suffer most in natural disaster are women, children, the elderly, the disabled, and ethnic minorities. The study uses correlation and regression analysis to find the relationship between the effect of disasters and different conditions of poverty. Socially and economically marginalized people and environmentally vulnerable areas are disproportionately affected by natural hazard. Identifying population and places that are vulnerable to disasters, it is important for disaster management, and it is important to reduce their economic consequences. Okay, continue the conceptual model. From the above literature disaster, poverty, and victims, we could make the conceptual model as follows. Disasters influence poverty, and poverty influence victims, and disaster also influence victims. continue with the theoretically about cluster analysis and regression analysis. The cluster analysis is one of the most important research directions in the field of data mining. Compared to other data mining methods, clustering can complete data classification without prior knowledge. K-means cluster algorithms as one of the clustering methods by partitioning data set into K cluster. This is a distance-based cluster algorithm that divides data into a number of clusters and numeric attributes. Regression analysis. It can be used to model the relationship between one or more independent variables and dependent variables. In data mining, independent variables are attributes already known, and response variables are what we want to predict. Multiple regression analysis is a method for estimating and predicting characteristics or the trend of population elicited by analyzing collected data. Okay, the result and discussion. The first about the clustering process. Data was obtained from two tables from the Central Statistic Board's 2015-2019, cleared and merged into a table and clustered using RapidMiner, with the result as follows. The first, cluster 0, is characterized by the middle number of disasters, middle percentage of poverty, and high number of deaths or losses, high number of injured, and low number of suffered. Cluster 2 is characterized by a high number of disasters, high percentage of poverty, middle number of deaths or losses, middle number of injured, and low number of suffered. And the cluster 1 is characterized by the low number of disasters, low percentage of poverty, low number of deaths or losses, middle number of injured, and high number of suffered. There are the dominant provinces. We about 29 provinces in the cluster 1. Continue to the regression process. Regression process were done using Python, and we get poverty 0.0470 times disasters. L square is 0.374. So we can conclude that as disaster reduced one time, the percentage of poverty reduced 4.7%, with the determined coefficient is 37%. Death or loss 12.6943. Poverty S square is 0.061. So we can reduce death or loss using a reduce of percentage poverty. Every percentage of poverty reduce 1%, death or loss reduce 12.69. People with determination coefficient is 6.1. From the two results, we need that disaster should be reduced and also percentage of poverty to be reduced to make sure that death or loss are reduced. Okay, the last about conclusion and recommendation. Indonesia disasters, percentage of poverty and victims can be clustered in 3 clusters with its specific characteristics, such as cluster 0 is characterized by middle number of disasters, middle percentage of poverty, and high number of death or loss, high number of injured, and low number of suffered. Cluster 2 is characterized by a high number of disasters, high percentage of poverty, middle number of death or losses, middle number of injured, and low number of suffer. Cluster 1 is characterized by low number of disasters, low percentage of poverty, low number of death or losses, middle number of injured, and high number of suffer. There are many provinces. From regression analysis, it can be concluded that we need to reduce disasters and also percentage of poverty to be reduced to make sure that death or loss are reduced. In conclusion, the author proposed that integrating socially disadvantaged groups' vulnerability into disaster mitigation policies can fundamentally reduce the loss of human lives and economic loss of a community from natural disaster. Thank you very much.